Do you know what kills an awful lot of people? Respectable caution. And writing is the opposite of that. Daring, throwing caution to the winds, letting yourself happen the way God made you.
A dull stone in the ring of the city is how James Joyce described Dublin's Trinity College, which for more than 400 years has been Ireland's principal university. On his day-long journey around the city, Joyce's Ulysses character, Leopold Bloom, encounters what he calls Trinity's surly front. Writers such as Dean Swift, Oliver Goldsmith, and Thomas Moore have passed through its gates. One noted poet of this century passed through them quickly in both directions.
In 1954, I came to the college for the first time. It's nearly 40 years ago. And I really liked the place, but I found it a bit intimidating. I found the accents especially intimidating, and I couldn't understand a lot of what the people were saying. And I also found the rooms, which were very big and dark, and not at all as elegant and well lit as they are now. I found them a bit frightening. So the truth was that I left the place after about 2 or 3 weeks and went back home.
Home was the village of Ballylongford, 8 miles north of Listowel on the Shannon estuary. The house was filled with the noise and laughter of 6 boys and 2 girls, the children of a nurse and her publican husband who ran the family bar at the bottom of the street. Brendan appeared in April 1936, and 4 years later began his national education at the little school on the edge of the village.
It's now 50 years and more since I started here as a student when I was 4 years of age, 53 years ago. And I remember the boy sitting next to me. I remember the lad who was better at handwriting than me. I remember Patsy McGibbon, God rest him, who could memorize poetry better than me. And I remember them then when they'd go out and play football. And I remember them when they went to England and went to America and came back. And there's been a bond, an interrupted bond, if you like, between us over the past 50 years. And I am grateful to my old teachers in the National School here, which is now a heap of rubble, and I'm very sad to see that. I'm grateful to the men who helped me to form these friendships and who gave me the love of memory and the love of language and the love of poetry and the love of words that I have tried to develop throughout my life.
The family home was where these premises today offer comfort and sustenance to others. Less cozy for Brendan in national school years, one might imagine, was the physical proximity of his teacher. He lived next door.
There was a big family of them there, and they were full of life. They had no trouble to go from one house to the other, and very playful. And then when he went to school, of course, eventually he came to me. I was teaching 3rd and 4th at that time. He'd be approximately 8 or 10, you know. He was a brilliant young lad at school, you know. He was very gay and light-hearted. He never took anything serious, even at that age, you know. You could see that there was something exceptional about him. So, and one occasion there, just for the chat, I asked the young kids what they were going to be when at later age. So one of them opted, he said he'd be a priest, and another said he'd be an engineer. Eventually I came to Brendan and I asked him, what would he like to be? Oh, I'd like to be a bishop. So he was aiming very high at that stage.
The Kennellys were always a close-knit unit, yet they blended comfortably with the community, sharing all the social and sporting activities of the neighbourhood. Family picnics would be enjoyed here at Carrigafoyle Castle, 2 miles outside Ballylongford on the shore of the Shannon. This stronghold of the Kerry O'Connor was finally overcome by Cromwell's army in 1649 because, according to legend, of a girl.
A girl who, for whatever reason, betrayed O'Connor with a small light which she showed to the Cromwellians, and they then invaded and overcame the castle. The legend also tells the story of O'Connor being captured and taken to Tralee and imprisoned there, and he was offered his freedom if he would abandon his faith in his people, but naturally, of course, with the courage of an O'Connor, he refused. Years later in Dublin, when I was thinking back on this, and I suppose to some extent going through some mental problems of my own, emotional problems, I began to write about the man. And I set this monologue in his mind in the prison in Tralee, where he was having these thoughts, and I called it A Small Light. A girl betrayed me with a spurt of candlelight. Almost 1,600 years have died since the birth of Christ. The windows of my castle are thin, but wide enough to let the signal be seen, the bright dying of love, the treacherous flicker in a black mass of stone, an adequate answer to a brutal question. Soldiers are rough men. They love to break and burn and kill. A small light led them to me. A small light is all. My castle is built on a small island, defended on the land side by double walls, the outermost having square flankers, the inward round bastions built in the infancy of the art of fortification. It is a pleasant place. I had not thought to meet defeat there. This ruin is a monument to my disgrace, which I accept as I accepted my glory. Let the river whisper my story to the stones on the shore, hearts dumb because they have sinned, to the reeds, girls waiting to be hit and ridden by the wind.
Alongside the castle is an island, sometimes totally covered by tidal flooding. Decades after those happy family picnics here, Brendan Kennelly, alone in a small Dublin room, fought his own agonizing battle against the tide of drink and the trauma of a failed marriage.
I was going through a period of old depression in the 70s, and it was that figure of the island man who came into my mind and helped me to express myself, because I think expression is the opposite of depression, and that is the peculiar health of poetry. And I wrote the poem over a year, and it helped me enormously. And at the end of it, I think I expressed my gratitude to the island and the island man for healing me. My people plucked the sea, worked the fields, created their own angels. From my own door, I see the bones of the old church, full of holes, like lost centuries. Put the wind's mouth to those holes. You have music to make Tice Nugent lay the strings aside. On summer evenings, old bones shine with a brightness that hurts my eyes, as if God, for his pleasure, made a bonfire of the dead, or tried to blind himself with human loss. I could not hear such music, see such fire, anywhere but here. The last time I leave the island, it will be nothing to me. Was it ever anything but my own eyes fondling its body? I know children's laughter grows deep green grass. Women's hearts fatten the rat. Old men's anguish satisfies the fox. And the backbone of a lively boy gives a fertile tongue to the clover.
Football was, as with most North Kerry youngsters, his first passion, playing for street, club, and eventually his county at the age of 18 in the 1954 Minor All-Ireland at Croke Park. Even earlier, Brendan showed his written flair, chronicling a challenge match between two Ballylongford teams. He completed his primary education in the village and then moved to an interdenominational school in Tarbert, 4 miles away, where he would develop his fascination with literature. St. Ita's College, in a draughty old house without electricity, hugged a hill above the Shannon and is, alas, no more. Only the old stables at the rear now remain.
I did my leaving cert in 1953 in St. Ita's in Tarbert. And there was a great woman there. Her name was Jane Agnes McKenna. And she had a terrific love of learning, which she instilled into me and all the other students.
Another of Brendan's teachers remembers his days at St. Ita's and the promise he showed, particularly in his command of the English language.
I wouldn't consider myself competent to forecast where Brendan's genius in English and French was considered. But Miss McKenna, the lady who owned the school and who ran the school, she always mentioned that Brendan was a genius and constantly referred to his command of language. So when he started to write, we weren't surprised.
Brendan won a scholarship to Trinity College. So in 1954, he came, he saw, but intimidated by it, went again. He returned to Dublin the following year as a clerk in the ESB, then moved to the north of England as a bus conductor, but came back to Trinity in 1957. 16 years later, he became the first occupant of the newly created Chair of Modern Literature.
I've been here now for 30 years teaching, and I've met a lot of wonderful people. I met a few bastards as well, but on the whole, I've met mostly intelligent, likable, warm-hearted and sharp-minded people. And also, of course, I've fallen in love with Dublin. A man should clear a space for himself, like Dublin City on a Sunday morning about 6 o'clock. Dublin and myself are rid of our traffic then, and I'm walking. Houses are solitary and dignified. Streets are adventures, twisting in and out and up and down my mind. The river is talking to itself and doesn't care if I eavesdrop. No longer cluttered with purpose, the city turns to the mountains and takes time to listen to the sea. I witness all three communing in silence under a relaxed sky. The small hills in this city are truly surprising when they emerge in that early morning light. Nobody has ever walked in them. They are waiting for the first explorers to straggle in from the needy north and squat down here this minute in weary legions between the cathedral and the river. At the gates of conquest, they might enjoy a deep, uninterrupted sleep. To have been used so much and without mercy, and still to be capable of rediscovering in itself the old nakedness, is what makes a friend of the city when sleep has failed. I make through that nakedness to stumble on my own, surprised to find the city is so like a man. Statues and monuments check me out as I pass, clearing a space for myself the best I can, one Sunday morning in the original sun in Dublin. Ideally, what I'd like to see happening is to see people coming in here to lectures from the factories, from the offices, in the evenings. The university is part of the city in which it is built, and it should collaborate with that city. It should educate it, and it should be educated by it. Now, that is my dream. I know that there's lots of factors, going against that dream, but one day perhaps it might happen. And so Dublin University will be well and truly Dublin University. I don't have any firm, fixed ideas about education. All I know is that I believe in the human spirit, and I think that education, as I understand it, is letting yourself grow. I choose my words very deliberately because I think a lot of people strangle themselves spiritually and imaginatively, and that unhappiness is not something that's inflicted on a lot of people. Unhappiness is something that a lot of us create for ourselves. Education is a way of developing your spirit and of helping yourself to express yourself. In our modern world, where there is so much expression coming at you from radio, from television, from films, from videos, from all areas, the irony is that people are not expressing themselves with the same kind of freedom that they used to do when I was growing up in Kerry.
And here in North Kerry, Brendan is still growing up. Oh, they know he's a university professor in Dublin and an internationally acclaimed and prize-winning author of poetry, novels and stage plays. But to local folk, he's still the joking, laughing lad who flirted with the girls from around the corner some 40 years ago, who'd snatch up a football for a quick game with the lads in the street, and who, naturally, will one day lie with his people and their people alongside the walls of nearby Lislochton Abbey.
The story goes that when Lislochton Abbey was attacked by the Cromwellian soldiers, the soldiers themselves were so struck by the beauty of the place that they decided to leave it alone. And they proceeded then to attack on the road to Carrigafoyle, to attack Carrigafoyle Castle. The monks were delighted that the soldiers had moved away, and they rang the bells in gratitude. The soldiers misinterpreted this as ringing the bells in mockery, and they came back and they burned the abbey and razed it and played havoc with it and reduced it to the ruins that we now see. They also beat to death 3 of the monks. Flashing starlings twist and turn in the sky above my head, while in Lislochton Abbey lie the packed, anticipating dead. Silent generations there that long have bent the knee endow the Shannon with the grace of reaching to the sea. Swollen by the rich juice of the dead, the Shannon moves with ease towards a mighty union with Atlantic mysteries. But though the river sweeps beyond each congested bone, its currents do not swirl towards a resurrection any more than starlings do that, fearing death this winter day, create small thunder in the sky and shelter where they may, ignoring green Lislochton, where subtle shadows pass, through shattered altars, broken walls, the blood of martyrs in the grass, into the ground that winters well and blossoms soon or late, preserving patient multitudes who are content to wait till they at last disturb the stones, the fox's lair, the starling's nest, to cry out with the howling damned, to wonder with the blessed, to hear the word for which they wait under the coarse grass, the meanest blade of which assists in what must come to pass, to see why silent centuries have finally sufficed to purge all in the rising flood of the overflowing blood of Christ. Restless at the gate, I turn away, groping towards what can't be said. and I know but little of the birds, the river, and the dead.
Brendan Kennelly produced his first book of poetry in 1959, and since then has written more than a dozen further volumes, 2 novels, and his most celebrated work, the book-length poem sequence, Cromwell, which took several years to research and write. So how does he work? What motivates and inspires him?
I might have a phrase in my mind, or a picture, or an image of my father's hands, or a word that I hear in a Dublin conversation, or a dream. I write a lot about dreams, and I would let it steep in my mind, and then I would take up my pen, usually in the morning about 6 o'clock, having woken up, have a cup of coffee, and I'd let it flow. And I might write page upon page upon page, and out of that I might take 10, 20 lines, and I would refine those and try to get them right. Sometimes I don't rewrite much. I kind of try to get it right at the beginning, and it does come out sometimes. But writing is a very mysterious process as well. A lot of it has to do with trust. You have to trust what comes into your head. It might be nothing to somebody else. Every time I sit down, I'm haunted by the possibility that I'm a bit of an idiot, a bit of a fool. And I live with that because we are all deeply, profoundly uncertain. What matters is that we admit it to ourselves and to others, too, if we have to. I am uncertain. I don't know if this is worth anything, but I'm going to write it anyway. And I trust words, even as I realize that words, in the end, perhaps are inadequate to express the full range of our human experience, particularly in the unconscious. My friend John B. Keane said to me recently at my daughter's wedding in Ballybunion, late at that night, he turned to me and said, having told brilliant stories all day long, John B. said to me, "Do you know what, Brendan?" he said, "Words are nothing. They're less than nothing." And I knew what he meant, because that man lives in language, and he has a great feeling for it. And anybody who loves language thinks of the opening of St. John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. St. John doesn't say, in the beginning was God. He says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God.
However much Brendan Kennelly loves his adopted Dublin, he has to periodically wash away the pressures of city life and rediscover rural nature and rural living. And here is where he revitalizes himself, the North Kerry resort of Ballybunion.
I've been coming to Ballybunion on and off for about half a century now, and all I can say is that it's getting a deeper place in my affections all the time. I came here first way back in the 40s with my father and mother, brothers and sisters. We used to have a terrific time. I'd say that probably what strikes me most about Ballybunion is the kindness of the people. And also the fact that they're a very easygoing people. When you come into this town, you realize that you're in the company of people who know how to handle time. They're not victims of haste. And I often come here, I must admit, after a very heavy year, and I feel a bit wound up, and it takes me quite a few days to get wound down. And in doing this, the people are a great help because they're terrific company. I enjoy the conversation, and I like spending time with them. Then, of course, there is the Atlantic. I'm a person who I like the middle of things, and I like the edge of things. I like to live in or near the center of Dublin. And when I come to Ballybunion, I like to live right at the edge of the Atlantic, which I do. I am sorry if I have brought misery to anybody. I think I have here and there throughout my life. I know I have, and I'm sorry if I've done that. I try to balance that against a bit of joy I might have brought to people, or a bit of love, or a bit of pleasure, or even a bit of intelligence in terms of education, or in writing of poems. And that's all you can hope for. I would like for some young fella or some young child, a girl or a boy, to say a bit of an old poem of mine for their grandfather when he asked them, do you know anything off by heart? That's what I'd like.
And you can see the next episode of A River of Words tomorrow afternoon at 1:05, when the spotlight falls on fellow Listowel scribe Brian McMahon.